But now we're going to get the latest on the Israel-Gaza war. Security officials from the United States, Egypt and Qatar will meet in Doha today to try to revive negotiations on a ceasefire in Gaza. And they include the CIA Director, William Burns. The White House says it's still waiting for a response from Hamas on a plan presented by President Biden last Friday. Hamas has insisted that any deal it subscribes to must commit to a permanent ceasefire and also an Israeli withdrawal from Gaza. On Tuesday, the Israeli army launched a new operation against Hamas in the Burj refugee camp in the centre of Gaza. Israeli forces are continuing to mount an offensive in the southern city of Rafah. And the al-Shifa hospital in Gaza City was the subject of multiple Israeli raids earlier this year. Our Middle East correspondent Yolande Knell has been speaking to rescue workers who have examined the wreckage amid calls for an international investigation into the hospital's destruction.
Amid ruins that reeked of death, Palestinians poured over what was once Gaza's biggest and best-equipped hospital after Israeli forces withdrew. Israel's military raid in March was the second at the site, and it was dramatically destructive. 4 mass graves containing, local search teams say, hundreds of bodies have now been dug up at al-Shifa, prompting international calls for an investigation into possible war crimes. There are reports of suspicious finds.
We've discovered bodies of women and children and people without heads, as well as torn body parts.
Israel's military says it exhumed bodies which Palestinians had buried earlier as it searched for hostages seized by Hamas. But some of the dead were patients. Walid believes his mother Lina died of malnutrition and dehydration. Her corpse was badly decomposed.
I identified her from particular marks on her legs. She'd been wounded in November and had a toe amputated on each foot.
Israel blames any deaths of patients on natural causes, but the World Health Organization says those trapped endured horrific conditions.
During the siege, 20 patients died, and there were patients on oxygen, let's say, who couldn't get oxygen. There was not proper medication, but also the food and water. There were stories that 15 people had to share 1 bottle of water.
Israel's army says Palestinian gunmen were based inside al-Shifa, and that over 2 weeks it killed more than 200 Hamas and Islamic Jihad operatives.
Shifa has become a main terrorism command center for Hamas. The surprise action by our forces was precise and surgical.
But battles spread onto nearby streets. And here, witnesses have told us that many civilians, including entire families, were also killed by Israeli airstrikes and snipers during the al-Shifa raid. A dedicated surgeon, Dr. Ahmed al-Makadma, was one of those shot dead close to the hospital where he worked.
I'm surprised that
I spoke to a top British surgeon who'd helped train him.
He was not just hungry for knowledge, he was a very gentle and somebody who all of us would want to have as our sort of doctors.
Dr. Ahmed was off shift at home near al-Shifa when Israeli forces returned. After 4 days under siege and a harsh interrogation by soldiers, he tried to leave Gaza City on foot with his mother Yusra. 11 days after his disappearance, his father Saeed says, we found Ahmed's decomposed body. Israel's military says it's unaware of the deaths of the surgeon and his mother. Many others are still searching for loved ones missing since the al-Shifa raid. With international forensic experts unable to get to the site, Gazans are mostly focusing on finding the dead and giving them proper burials. And that adds to worries that the full truth of what happened here may never be uncovered. Yolande Knell, BBC News, Jerusalem.
We do have a special section on our website dedicated to the Israel-Gaza war. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News.